Hi, this is Tim at the National Weather Service in Reno. I wanted to give you a bit of an update for end of March, early April for the snowpack and water supply conditions. This image here is looking from Mount Lincoln north as of yesterday, the 30th, and you can just see how little high elevation snow there is remaining, even especially on the sunny aspects. So April 1st is typically what we consider historically our kind of near peak snowpack accumulation. Back when we used to do manual measurements exclusively of snowpack, all the forecasts were usually based off that April 1st date. Realistically, the peak usually varies from late March into early April, depending on the snow year. But this year we've been way ahead of schedule. This year peaked around February 20th for most basins, and then that was followed by a wet, warm event that started the snow melt really early, and then we had, remember, March being so warm, and that's continued to take the snowpack off at near record rates. And our actual streams, most of the streams in the area have peaked around February 25th, kind of the tail end of that last rain event where we had some very warm, windy conditions. And that timing of that peak snowmelt, which would usually hope to have more like early May into June, now that's kind of created a larger gap between our water supply and demand, and also extended the snow-free season. And now we're in a little bit more active weather pattern finally this week, but it unfortunately not going to last very long, and it's too little too late. You know, we may add a little bit of snow in the mountains this week, but it's definitely not enough to make a big difference in our water supply and snowpack condition. Looking at the conditions right now, these are the snowpack basin averages. You can see slightly more favorable along the east, but still only 46% of normal down in the Owens Basin, and down to 0% in the Humboldt. So very poor conditions. If we take a look at all the snowtail sites on the eastern Sierra, this is basically from Tahoe down to the Walker River. The black line here indicates this year's snow accumulation. This green line here is the median of all the historic years, about 45 years. This is your typical peak. So you can see this year we peaked here about February 20th or so. So that's about 6 weeks ahead of normal. And you can see we really only had two major events here around Christmas time, and then around February 18th, 20th time period, with big dry spell in between, and then that melt just kicking in. And now we're approaching our lowest year here, which is 2015. Conditions are actually worse in northern Nevada outside of the Sierra. There are only two snowtail sites that still have any snow to measure. The Humboldt Basin is at by far its record low, well below the 2015 year. It has actually melted out about 5 to 6 weeks earlier than that record low year of 2015. In contrast, it's interesting to take a look at the precipitation for the water year to date. That's from October 1st, and along the east side of the Sierra, that's very close to normal, and it's not far from normal in northern Nevada too, 80 to 85%. So the warm season created much more rain than snow, and then early snow melt is giving us this warm snow drought. Wanted to look at the stream flow conditions. This is the observed water year flow to date as a percent of the median. You can see on the east side of the Sierra it's quite favorable, and that's because we're kind of front loading our snow melt. A lot of that melt has already happened, so the flows for February and March were well higher than normal. You can see clearly that in the Humboldt Basin they were well below normal in general. But then if you look at our forecasted April-July stream flows, and this is when you'd expect to see the greatest volume of your water supply for the season and your snowmelt fed water, you can see these numbers are very low, and they're very different than the observed flows to date, since we've seen most of that flow in advance of the April 1st cutoff of these forecasts. And when you look at drawing in on one of these forecasts, is Carson and Carson City, this black line is the median forecast over time. You can see it was fairly favorable in mid-February, just before and during that last big snow event. And then once we started to melt that snow off prematurely, and we had an outlook for very dry conditions, and continued to melt it off, they've really dropped off very significantly since then. To summarize, The snowpack in our area is one of our, it's our biggest natural reservoir. And this year we've already seen most of that water be released kind of well in advance of the summer demands. And that early melt leaves this big gap between the stream flow and demand. And usually there's our summertime where we really heat up and we have the biggest agricultural and various use demands, and that's not in line with where the water supply is this year, and it's more out of sync than usual. This prolonged snow-free season in the mountains could lead to a more severe fire season and impact recreation and ecosystems. And the wild card is kind of the spring and summer weather, how that has limited impact on water supply conditions, but it can really have a big impact on the fire risk, the drought and landscape conditions, and that could be in either a positive or negative manner. So thanks for your time.